This is not just betrayal, this is a textbook case of narcissistic self-sabotage. Damien Vale did not send that photo because he was careless. He sent it because deep down he needed to prove that he could inflict pain and still remain in control. That is what makes him psychologically terrifying. Clara's response is even more revealing. She doesn't explode because she has already been emotionally starved for months. She withdraws, protects her unborn child, and chooses distance over chaos. The real shock here is this: the most dangerous man in the city wasn't defeated by enemies. He was exposed by his own pathological need to destroy love before love could abandon him.
So get this. The guy who ran the city on fear is about to see his entire kingdom get nuked by one epic screw-up. This dude, Damien Vale, had an empire of cash and intimidation that looked totally bulletproof. His downfall? A moment of pure, uncut arrogance. Sending a photo to his pregnant wife. No rival could touch him, no competitor could take his throne, but that one picture, proof of his betrayal, torched the only thing his money couldn't buy, the woman he loved. This is a masterclass in how a narcissist sets himself on fire with a digital sin. From his 47th floor penthouse, he didn't just see the city, he owned it. A sea of lights that was his personal conquered territory. Every light down there was a soul that either bowed to Damien Vale or paid him. The apartment itself was a monument to cold, hard cash. Polished Italian marble bounced the dim light around the massive space. The furniture cost more than a normal dude's car. The art was acquired in ways that were shady, to say the least. And in the center of this icy palace was Clara Vale, 7 months pregnant. She was folding tiny baby clothes, a task she performed with robotic precision because she had no other real purpose in life. Her hands just moved, smoothing, folding, and refolding. Each little outfit, smaller than her hand, felt like a promise she knew was about to be shattered into a million pieces. Down the hall, the nursery was finished, but felt totally dead inside. The fancy gray walls had a designer name and a price tag to match. An empty crib stood there like a ghost. A mobile hung completely still. The whole room was just waiting for a life created inside a marriage that Clara knew was a total sham. Her eyes drifted to the dining table. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 1 for water, and 2 napkins folded into the sharp triangles Damien demanded. It was her nightly ritual of denial, setting a place for a husband who rarely bothered to show up. It was 7:43 p.m. He promised 7. Traffic, she told herself, just another lie to get through the night. She made up a story about a meeting that ran long, spitting out the same empty excuses that had become her default setting for the last 8 months. Every lie was easier to say but harder to swallow. Suddenly, the baby kicked, a real turn under her skin, making her gasp and manage a faint smile. She put her hand on the spot, feeling the tiny life shift inside. "I know," she whispered. "I feel him being gone too." And that was the absolute worst part of her nightly wait. She desperately missed him. Not the corporate titan who made their home a gilded hotel, but the man he was before ambition ate him alive. She missed Daniel. That was his name when she first met him, before he morphed into the ice-cold Damien. She remembered Sunday mornings when he'd make the worst scrambled eggs but be so proud she had to eat every bite. She ached for the nights they were tangled together, his hand resting on her hip like an anchor, his breathing a steady comfort. She missed being his entire universe. Now she was just another asset in his portfolio, kept in a gorgeous cage while he was out building statues to himself. Clara put down a little yellow onesie with elephants on it and slowly pushed herself up from the couch. Her sense of balance was a mess now, her body feeling both amazing and totally alien. Standing by the window, she was just a silhouette against the city Damien thought he ruled. Out in that blaze of light, he was closing deals, crushing enemies, and building his own myth, becoming more of a legend and less of the husband she needed. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Shh, Clara whispered, rubbing her belly in slow circles. He'll be home. He always comes home. But the words felt empty, and she wondered what home even meant to a man who had crowned himself a god. And across town, in a restaurant you had to book 6 months out, Damien Vale was busy proving her right. He was holding court in a private room where the lighting made everyone look good. The wine cost a week's salary, and his companion was definitely not his wife. Sienna Crow wore her beauty like a weapon. She had killer cheekbones, eyes that held a look of permanent, savage amusement, and lips the color of a fresh wound. She had this controlled, chaotic vibe that turned smart men into idiots and powerful men into gamblers. Tonight, Damien was playing both roles. "Tell me something," she said, swirling the red wine. "Do you ever actually go home to that fortress? Or is it just a flex to prove you can afford a wife?" Damien let out a laugh. It was a hollow practice sound he used whenever a comment landed a direct hit. "I go home." "When?" "Between hostile takeovers." Sienna leaned in, her smile looking like a shark's. "I've known you for 4 months, Damien. You've mentioned your wife twice. Your penthouse, 5 times. Your empire, non-stop. What does that data tell you?" "It tells me I'm a focused man. It tells me you're dying of boredom." The word hung in the air like a gunshot, cracking his cool facade. He grabbed his fancy Bordeaux, a bottle the wine guy presented like a holy relic, and threw back a gulp that it absolutely did not deserve. "Clara's pregnant," he announced, as if that was the end of the argument. 7 months along. It's a delicate situation." "All situations get delicate when you're caught where you shouldn't be." Sienna's eyes were like shards of ice. "Tell me about her, this wife you keep hidden away." Damien shifted the expensive chair, groaning. The question was a total landmine, and any answer would set it off. "She's a good woman, kind. She'll be an amazing mother." "How touching." The sarcasm in Sienna's voice could cut steel. "Good and kind. The words you'd use to describe a house pet. That is not—" The words got stuck in his throat, his jaw locking up. "You don't know her." "I don't have to. I know you." Sienna set her glass down, her eyes locked on him like a predator about to strike. "You made yourself this force of nature, Damien. You command loyalty. You inspire fear. Men twice your age bend to your will. And then you go home to a woman who what? Organizes your closet, waits for you in total silence, asks you about your day." Every question was a scalpel, slicing open a reality he refused to see. The truth was, he was a ghost in Clara's life. He had no idea if she was happy, sad, or just ticking off days until the baby came to fill the hole he'd left. "She chose to live this life," he said, his voice sounding weak even to himself. "Did she?" Sienna tilted her head. "Or did she choose a man who doesn't exist anymore?" The fancy room suddenly felt like an oven. Damien tugged at the collar of his perfect Tom Ford shirt and flagged down the waiter for more wine he didn't even want. "What's the point of this interrogation?" he snapped. "My motive is curiosity." Sienna's smile was all teeth. "I want to see if the great Damien Vale is really untouchable, or if there's a flicker of guilt for the pregnant woman you've locked up in that tower." "I haven't locked her up. She's given everything. Except for you." The server's return with the wine was the only thing that cut the tension. As the red liquid filled his glass, Damien wondered when luxury stopped being a reward and became his drug of choice. "I provide for her," he said after the server left. "The home, the security, the best doctors. She will never have a single worry." How incredibly noble. Sienna took a tiny, calculated sip. "You've given her a beautiful, gold-plated prison." "It is not a prison. She is free to—" He stopped dead, hit by the fact that he had absolutely no idea what Clara was free to do. Leave? She never threatened to. Argue? She barely complained. Ask for him? She'd given up on that months ago. The silence that followed was an indictment. "Want to hear my theory?" Sienna asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I think you're terrified." "Of what?" "Of being ordinary. Of choosing a throne instead of a family. You've told yourself that providing money is the same as being present, that the fear you create is worth more than your wife's love." Her analysis just hung there in the air. "Prove me wrong," Damien wanted to fire back, to use the cold logic that won him boardroom battles. But the words wouldn't come. A hot flush of shame burned through him, and he hated Sienna for lighting the match. "This is the truth," Sienna cut in. "I know, which is why every part of you wants to run away right now, but you won't. Because that would mean going home, the one place you're desperate to avoid, correct?" He was. She was 100% correct. And it was dead on. The penthouse wasn't a home. It was a tomb he built himself. Slick and stylish, but totally lifeless. In that cold museum, Clara was just another acquisition. The perfect wife. A beautiful, quiet display piece in his fake reality. Facing her meant facing the massive gap between the man he pretended to be and the monster he was. That would mean questions he couldn't answer. It was way easier to be here, getting numb on booze with a woman who wanted nothing real from him. "Another bottle?" Sienna asked, her smile pure predator. Damien just nodded. At 8:30, a notification lit up Clara's phone. "Meeting's running late. Don't wait up." 6 words. No apology, no care about the dinner getting cold. A shutdown as impersonal as a weather forecast. Clara stared at the bright screen for a minute before flipping the phone face down. She should have felt rage, should have demanded better. Instead, there was just that old, familiar emptiness of being let down again. Her hands started moving on autopilot, folding clothes for the baby. A little flutter from inside her, a kick that was still a tiny miracle. She was creating a life in total isolation, stuck with a man whose last name she wore like a jacket that didn't fit. "It'll be different when you're here," she whispered to her growing belly. "He'll remember what's important. He'll come back." It was a weak prayer sent out to a universe that wasn't listening. Just words spoken into the silence. She thought about calling her brother, Evan, who had this theory that guys chasing power were just masking some deep-seated fear. But admitting Evan was right meant admitting her own judgment was trash, a truth she wasn't ready to carry. So she stayed put in her luxurious prison, getting baby clothes ready for a kid whose father was becoming a complete stranger on the other side of the city. By 2200 hours, the booze had Damien firmly in its grip. He wasn't stumbling, but the world had gone soft around the edges, and consequences felt like a problem for another day. In this haze, Sienna's voice was just background music, and her challenges felt like a come on. They ditched the restaurant an hour before, leaving the bill behind like people for whom money is just a concept. Now they were in her loft, another testament to expensive emptiness, where the city lights below melted into a gorgeous, fractured painting. "You're shedding your skin tonight," Sienna observed, stretched out on a leather sofa, holding her wine glass loosely. "Less uptight. It looks good on you." "I'm relaxed," Damien shot back. But the word was a total lie. This wasn't comfort. It was him giving up, cutting the cord to all his responsibilities. "You're defecting," Sienna corrected him, "from the fortress, the wife, the life you built so perfectly." She set her glass down and rose with the smooth deadliness of a hunter. "The only question is, what are you running to?" She was close now, her perfume a mix of dark spice and illegal promises wrapping around him. He was close enough that staying put was an active choice. "This is a mistake," Damien heard his own voice say, but he didn't move an inch. "The biggest ones always are." Sienna's hand landed on his chest, feeling like a brand right over his heart. "For months, you've played the part of the happy man, pretending the perfect home and the pregnant wife were enough, but they're not, are they? You wouldn't be here if they were." Her logic was pure venom, and it was true. He saw the trap. He knew what she was doing, but he did nothing a faithful husband would do. He let himself imagine torching the whole charade, letting the untouchable king fall just to be a man, impulsive, messed up, and real. "Damien," Sienna breathed, her mouth inches from his. "When did you last do something just because you wanted to? Not as a power move, not for the master plan, just for yourself?" He didn't have an answer. For 3 years, every single action had been a calculated chess move. Clara herself had been a strategic acquisition, her family name the key to his legitimacy. When had he stopped choosing what he wanted? "Show me," she whispered in his ear. "Show me you're more than an act. Prove you can still be dangerous." "How?" The word was a raw crack in the silence. Sienna pulled back just enough to lock eyes with him, her gaze electric with a dare. "Let's capture this. Right now. Something real, something that proves you're here by choice, not by duty." His heart was hammering against his ribs. "That's risky." "I know, that's the whole point." Her smile was sharp and all-knowing. "Unless, of course, you're scared." And there it was, the one challenge his ego would never let him refuse. His whole empire was built on the myth that he was fearless. How could he back down from a single photo? "I'm not afraid," he said. "Then prove it." Sienna pulled out her phone, pressing up against him. "Smile like you mean it." She held the camera up. Damien saw their reflection, Sienna's wild, defiant beauty next to his own face, flushed with wine and recklessness. They looked like partners in some gorgeous, epic crime, a bright flash. "Perfect," Sienna breathed, looking at the screen. "We look right together, dangerous together." He glanced over her shoulder and had to agree. They looked alive, not like two people faking it. "Now send it to her," Sienna said, her tone perfectly casual. That sentence hit the silent room like a bomb. "What?" "To your wife." Sienna turned to him, her expression a perfect mix of amusement and cruelty. "Send her the picture. Prove that you're not a slave to guilt or fear or whatever programming makes you play the good husband." "That's insane." "No, it's honest." Her eyes pinned him down. "You're trying to live 2 different lives. You want risk? Then take a risk. Drop the act and make a real choice." Damien's heart pounded. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was a catastrophe, an act that would shatter his world and absolutely destroy Clara. But the alcohol was a fire in his blood, and Sienna's dare spoke to a dark, broken piece of him. He'd faked happiness for months, faked intimacy with Clara. Maybe the only real thing left to do was to be cruel. Maybe cruelty was its own kind of freedom. His thumb hovered over Clara's name. "Unless you're afraid," Sienna whispered again. Damien Vale built a dynasty by never backing down. He tapped send. The message vanished with a soft chime, like a lock clicking shut for good. For one brilliant, soaring moment, Damien felt like a god, unbound, all-powerful, and free. Then the weight of what he'd done came crashing down. "What have I—" he started, but Sienna was laughing, a sharp, triumphant sound. "You actually did it," she said, her eyes gleaming. "The great Damien Vale embracing chaos. I never thought you had it in you." Damien stared at his phone, at the single word. Delivered. Across the city, in a quiet apartment, a bomb he had just armed was about to detonate in the life of his pregnant wife. The power he'd felt seconds ago curdled into a deep physical sickness. "I need to—" The thought died in his throat. Explain? Words wouldn't work. Fix it? What's done was done. Sienna's smile had changed, softening into something like a doctor's pity. "Welcome to the consequences, Damien. It turns out being invincible doesn't make you immune to your own screw-ups." He looked at her then, really saw her for the first time, not as a lover but as a mirror for his own ugliest truths, a reality his pride had let him ignore. "I have to leave," he said, already turning. "To do what? Say you're sorry?" Her voice followed him. "You sent that, Damien. You can't take it back. You can't fix what you just shattered." He walked away, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator, a cold horror building inside him that was totally alien to his usual cool control. Damien Vale was a man defined by power, by being unshakable, by the legend of his own perfection. This was a massive crack in that foundation. Inside the descending elevator, time felt like it was warping. He stared at his wife's name on his screen, trying to invent a lie that could explain the picture he'd sent. An accident, a prank, both were totally unbelievable. The truth was just a sick impulse to push things to the limit, to see if the perfect world he built would actually break. In trying to become a god, he forgot about the man's talent for self-destruction. The elevator doors opened onto the street where his driver stood perfectly still, like a statue. Inside the Mercedes, the familiar smell of expensive leather felt suffocating, like the air in a sealed tomb. "Home," he said, the single word tasting like ash in his mouth. Home was supposed to be a refuge, a place for forgiveness. Two things he knew he wouldn't find in his penthouse on the 47th story. Through the window, the city lights smeared into a fast, meaningless blur. He watched the city rush by, thinking about the simple lives other men led, sharing meals, reading stories, just being there, rituals he had always looked down on. His entire existence was a temple built to his own superiority. It was that exact ego trip that made him send the devastating picture, a raw and brutal display of his own power. The 20-minute drive stretched into an eternity. His phone remained dark, and the silence from his wife was a far worse punishment than any angry message. The night doorman, a familiar face, nodded at him with normal respect. "Good evening, Mr. Vale." But Damien could only give a weak nod, his throat locked up as he stepped into the private elevator to his lair. This penthouse wasn't just his monument, it was his cage, a 47-story silent scream. The doors slid open to a cavern of cold marble and harsh modern art he'd picked out 3 years back. Lights were on. "Clara!" he called out, but the massive quiet just swallowed his voice. A table set for two with a now frigid meal looked like an artifact from a life that just got canceled. The stillness in the room was all wrong, heavy with a quiet that wasn't peaceful at all. This wasn't calm. This was the vacuum left behind when someone bails. He said her name again, louder this time, but got only static in return. So he began a methodical sweep of the penthouse, his dread cranking up with every empty room he cleared. In the main room, a tiny, perfectly folded stack of baby clothes. The kitchen was sterile, completely untouched. The nursery was a flawless, vacant stage set. He stopped at their bedroom door. The bed was made with military precision. Her nightstand was wiped clean, zero trace of her. Her closet door was cracked open, revealing huge gaps where her life used to be. And right there, sitting on his pillow, was a small velvet box next to a single folded piece of paper. His hands were shaking as he grabbed the two items. Inside the box was Clara's wedding ring, a platinum and diamond band from a time when he thought a month of his life was a good trade. The note was on her classy cream-colored paper. Her handwriting was impossibly steady, like a surgeon's. "Damien, thanks for being so clear. The picture you sent said way more than words ever could about where you stand. For 7 months I waited for you to come home. I see now you were already there, just not with me. I won't fight you on this. I'm choosing peace, for me and for our child." Her letter wasn't an attack, it was a final report. "You've got your kingdom. I hope it's enough. My lawyer will handle everything with our child. You can be a father, but my contract as wife to a ghost is officially terminated. Clara." He reread the words over and over, but his brain couldn't process them. They were just cold, hard facts on a page. Her clinical, detached tone gave him no emotional loophole to exploit. She hadn't just left, she'd surgically removed herself from his life. He just collapsed onto the bed, a king stranded on an island of his own, cold success. For the first time, Damien Vale, a man who built himself to be invincible, felt the soul-crushing weight of being completely helpless. His phone buzzed. A text from Sienna, the other woman, popped up. "Well, how did it go?" The casual poison in that message hit him with a gut-wrenching flash of insight, making him feel for just a second the same deep humiliation Clara must have gone through. It was a brutal snapshot of how little he meant to a woman he was just pretending to care about. He left her on red. He just sat there in the hollow silence, clutching the ring, finally seeing that he'd mistaken his slow-motion self-destruction for some kind of freedom. Outside the window, the city lights blazed, a galaxy of a million other stories. Every single light out there was a life, a different choice, a consequence. Inside the silent tomb he'd designed for himself, Damien Vale finally understood the real cost of being untouchable, a terminal case of loneliness. Sleep was a no-go. He sat in the living room until the first signs of dawn, gripping the letter, watching the sky bleed from black to gray. The morning's beauty felt like a spectacular act of cruelty. By 7 a.m., his phone had 23 messages from his people and Marcus Chen, his number 2, who pointed out that for the first time in 2 years, Damien had ghosted their 6 a.m. conference call. One last message was from Sienna. "You're not responding. Did I finally break you?" He swiped it into oblivion. His own calls to Clara went straight to her voicemail, a cheerful phantom from a time when she actually wanted to hear from him. "Hi, you've reached Clara. Please leave a message." The words he needed were stuck in his throat. Clara, it's me. I need to explain. He hung up, knowing he had nothing to say. Just call me. An hour went by. Her line was dead, straight to voicemail. By noon, he was pacing the huge apartment like a caged tiger. The perfect architecture of his life had completely imploded. A huge deal with the Castellano family, months of work, suddenly didn't matter at all. His mind kept drifting back to those tiny folded clothes as he realized he couldn't even remember the last time he'd asked his wife how she was feeling. His phone rang, and a stupid spark of hope that it was Clara was instantly extinguished. It was Marcus. "Where in God's name are you?" his deputy demanded. "The Castellanos are about to walk. They think this is a massive insult." "Manage it," Damien rasped, and a shocked silence echoed down the line. In 5 years, Marcus had never been given an order that reckless. "Manage it how?" he asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "I couldn't care less. Give them the e-stocks. Give them whatever they want. Just make it go away." "Damien, what's going on? Are you okay?" "My wife has left me," he said, the words coming out flat and dead. "Last night, she took everything." Another long pause as Marcus, who only knew Clara as a name, tried to compute this. "I'm sorry, is there anything I can do?" "I need you to find her." "Got it. My guys can look, keep it on to down low. Do you have any clue where she might have gone?" The question exposed a black hole of ignorance so huge it stunned him into silence. He knew zero of her friends, nothing about her family, none of her safe havens. 7 months into their marriage, and he was a total stranger. "Her brother," he finally managed to say. "Evan Hart. He's somewhere in Riverside, I think." "You think?" "I've never been there," Damien admitted, and the words felt like swallowing broken glass. "She mentioned a house with a blue door." "That's not a lot to go on." "Then make it enough. That's your job." He killed the call, a fresh wave of despair washing over him. He knew the anger he'd just aimed at Marcus was just poison spilling from his own wound. He scanned the penthouse, 4,700 square feet of cold stone that now felt like a crypt. Every single object, every chair, every table, all the art was chosen to project power, not to be comfortable. He remembered Clara's early, shy attempts to breathe some life into the place. The plants he called clutter, the photos that messed with his clean look. He had systematically shot down every one of her efforts until she just quit trying. When did he stop seeing her as a person? His phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. The message from Evan Hart was brutally to the point. Clara was safe. She was done talking to him. All future chats about their kid would go through her lawyers. He should wait for their call. Damien felt a surge of white-hot fury fighting a cold dread. His gut reaction was that she was just hiding, using her family and lawyers as a shield. But that was wrong. Her letter, her exit, it was all too planned, too calm. She wasn't hiding from him. She was building a fortress against him. Then the truth hit him like a physical blow. Clara wasn't the problem, he was. His reply was one last desperate power play. "I need to see her, please, just 5 minutes." The response came back instantly. The text was cruelly simple. "She knew you would call. The answer is no." His desperate follow-up, "This is my child as well," was met with a clinical slice. "You should have thought of that before you sent the picture." Rage took over, and Damien launched his phone at the wall. The impact echoed, but the phone was fine, a reinforced piece of gear, just like he preferred things. Built to last. a preference he tragically hadn't applied to his marriage. He picked it up and switched to a hollow apology. "Tell her that I'm sorry." Evan's reply was surgical. "Tell her yourself. Once you learn how to be a man, not just a monument." Those words hit their mark, shattering the armor he'd so carefully built around himself. The man had been sacrificed to build the mogul. As dusk started to fill the penthouse, the walls felt like they were closing in. In a complete break from his life script, Damien walked out alone. No driver, no bodyguards, no destination. He just vanished into the city's bloodstream, his name and face erased by the anonymous crowd. No one deferred to him, no one even looked at him twice. The sudden lack of worship was a dizzying shock. He was just another guy caught in the Friday night rush. The fall from his throne was terrifying, but in a weird way, it was also liberating. His random walk ended in front of a small diner, the exact kind of place he was programmed to hate. So, our guy, this top-tier shot caller, is completely imploding. He ducks into this greasy spoon diner, the kind with worn-out menus and buzzing lights, totally a spot his wife Clara would have dug. And just like that, he's inside. A tired-looking waitress named Bonnie just points with her pen. "Anywhere's fine, hun. Coffee." He just nods. She's back in a flash, pouring from a pot with zero ceremony, her eyes sizing him up. "Rough one." A laugh, totally wrested from disuse, almost escapes him. "You have no idea." Her comeback was pure pro. Coffee's good for that. Pie, too. Apple or cherry. And he hears himself say, "Apple," even though he can't remember the last time he ate pie. His personal chef was all about foams and fancy reductions. This was pure rebellion. Bonnie comes back with a monster slice of pie, ice cream already melting all over the plate. She refills his coffee without saying a word and just moves on. He takes a bite. It was simple, sweet, and absolutely perfect. The most legit thing he's eaten in years. Then he pulls up the picture, the digital nuke that started this whole mess. It's him and Sienna, their faces glowing with that dumb, reckless confidence. The timestamp reads 10:47 p.m., an hour when Clara would have been home, nesting for their kid, waiting for him. The thought was a shard of glass in his gut. Who sends that to their pregnant wife? A dude who'd rather be feared than loved. "You holding up, hun?" Bonnie was back, and her face had this genuine concern he hadn't seen in forever. "My wife is gone," Damien just blurts out, the words finally coming easy. "She left last night. I did something that can't be fixed." She topped off his cup again. "That's a heavy word." "I sent her a picture of me and someone else. She's 7 months pregnant." "Oh, honey." The concern in her eyes flipped to straight-up judgment. "Yeah, that's pretty much unforgivable." "I know." "So what made you do it?" Damien put his fork down. "I'm a fool who thought power was a permission slip. I thought I was bulletproof. And now you know you're not." Bonnie leaned against the booth's vinyl. "My second husband was like that. Thought his paycheck gave him a free pass to be a garbage person. You know where he is now?" "Where?" "Couldn't tell you. Haven't laid eyes on the guy in 15 years. She stood up straight. "Thing is, consequences don't give a damn about your bank statement, hun. They always come to collect." She drifted over to another table, leaving him with his pie, his phone, and the absolute ruins of the only real thing he ever built. For 2 hours, he just watched people live, couples splitting an order of fries. A woman was reading a book in a corner booth. A guy in work boots ate his dinner at the counter. These were regular people with regular lives, none of them obsessed with building empires or proving they were untouchable. He paid Bonnie 3 times the bill and walked back into the night. The weekend that followed was just a sleepless, frantic train wreck of failures. He had flowers delivered to Evan's house. They got sent right back. He tried going there himself, only to get greeted by Evan holding a baseball bat, making his point crystal clear. He called Clara's doctor, trying to get info at the baby. The law slammed an unbreakable wall of patient privacy in his face. Monday rolled around, and Marcus was in the penthouse with reports Damien was locked out of, his lieutenant's face a mask of worry. "You look like a ghost," Marcus said straight up. "I'm flattered." "When did you last get any real sleep?" Damien waved it off. "What about the Castellanos?" "To hell with the Castellanos, this is about you." The folder hit the table with a thud. "I've been your number 2 for 5 years. I've seen you stare down cold-blooded killers. But now, you're just fractured. I'm fine. No, you're not. And the predators are starting to smell blood." He showed him his phone, lit up with a flood of alerts. "The Southside crews think we're vulnerable. The Morettis are pushing our boundaries. 2 of our suppliers are trying to use your so-called weakness against us. They can try. Damien, your power is built on the myth that you're invincible. The second they see a crack, they'll come to shatter you. You get that?" "I do." He covered his face with his hand. "I just don't have the capacity for turf wars right now." "Then what do you have capacity for?" "Bringing her home." The room went dead silent. And if that's not possible? The question hung in the air like poison. His entire life was built on the idea that anything could be bought or broken with his influence. His entire worldview boiled problems down to things you could solve with cash, force, or fear. But Clara wasn't some asset to be acquired. She was a person he had pushed past her limit. "I can't say," Damien admitted, the words feeling like a surrender. "All right, I'll run the territories while you deal with this, but you have to decide, fast. This hesitation will be our downfall. You either focus up or what?" Marcus's look was pure steel. "Or you give up control. Let me or council take the reins. You can't be a ghost in the machine, Damien. This world will chew you up and spit you out." When Marcus left, Damien just stood at the window, watching the city below. From 47 stories up, the city looked manageable, like something he could conquer. Every problem was distant, every consequence just a theory. But down on those same streets, Clara was building a life that had nothing to do with him. His phone buzzed, showing a number he didn't recognize. "Speak." "Mr. Vale, I am Jennifer Reeves. I am Clara's legal counsel." A blast of ice shot through his core. "Is she all right? The child?" "Both are healthy. I'm calling to discuss a provisional custody arrangement." "Custody is off the table. I have to talk to my wife." "Your wife has no desire to talk to you. She does, however, want to set clear boundaries for your role as a father." The lawyer, Jennifer, spoke with this calm, unbreakable composure. "Is your schedule open for a meeting this week? I demand to see Clara." "That is not an option." "Then there are no options." His voice switched to that practiced tone of command that bent billionaires to his will. "My child's future is not something for lawyers to handle. If Clara has conditions, she will give them to me in person. Mr. Vale, I understand you're emotional, but strong-arm tactics are." "This isn't a tactic. This is reality. Clara is my wife. The child is mine. Her wanting to leave is between us. She will not use you to erase me from the picture. She isn't erasing you. She is protecting herself from you. That line hit him like a punch to the gut. I am aware of my actions. Are you? Your concern sounds like it's about your loss of power, not the damage you caused. For just a second, Jennifer's professional mask slipped. Clara showed me the photograph, Mr. Vale, and the note. She told me about the long silences while you were busy building your empire. You have to see why your demand for a face-to-face meeting isn't landing with me. Damien squeezed his eyes shut. What are her demands? She requires you to stay away until the child is born. She needs a calm environment to recover and give birth, free from your specific brand of chaos. She will allow supervised visits after the delivery under a strict set of rules that define your access. Supervised, he thought. Like I'm a danger? At 10:47 post-meridium, you sent a photo of yourself with a mistress to your pregnant wife, Mr. Vale. What would you call an act like that if not a threat? Damien was left hanging in the void of his own massive screw-up. This is how we'll move forward, Jennifer stated. I will send a preliminary custody proposal. You will get your own lawyer. We will handle this like adults. And if you have any real fatherly instinct, you will respect Clara's wishes and give her the space she needs. And if I refuse, then you will confirm every bad thing she thinks about you, giving Clara the legal high ground to almost completely terminate your parental claims. Jennifer's tone changed, a calculated softening. I've been doing this for 15 years, Mr. Vale. I know men like you, driven, successful, convinced you're perfect. A few of them wise up before everything is lost. Others don't. The difference is the actual substance of your character. The call ended before he could even answer. Damien stared at his phone's dead screen at the reflection of some stranger, haggard, exhausted, with empty eyes. A joke of the flawless image he had built so carefully. It took 20 minutes before Jennifer's official email landed in his inbox. As Damien read it, the dense legal speak carved a massive canyon between his life and the words on the screen. Clara was to be the primary guardian. He was offered supervised visits every other weekend, but only if he was sober and emotionally stable. The financial support was huge, but basically pocket change to him. He was stripped of all say in his kids' major life decisions, school, health, values, unless Clara decided to let him in. He was being demoted to a long-distance benefactor, a ghost who visited twice a month with a babysitter. The proposal was a masterclass in cold logic, a fortress of law, and a weapon designed for psychological demolition. So this guy's first instinct was to go full scorched earth. Unleash his lawyers, fight every single point, use his cash and clout to paint Clara as a bad mom, force a win, and just dominate. But then his eyes hit the last part. These terms are to shield the child from an unstable environment. If Mr. Vale shows real effort in self-improvement and co-parenting, this can be reviewed after the kid's first year. A sustained effort. This wasn't a prison sentence from Clara. It was a summons to become a new man, and just like that, his entire defense strategy crumbled. For 3 days, he'd framed this as a power struggle, a game of winners and losers. This was no game. It was a final bill coming due. His pregnant wife had been collateral damage to his ambition. The picture of his mistress was a flex of control. His empire was built on the wreckage of his marriage, and now Clara was using a weapon he'd never respected. She picked peace over his drama, safety over his status, and being human over his power. Damien snapped his laptop shut, swallowed by the silence of his own gold-plated cage. Outside, the city was alive. Inside, he was staring down the man he had become. He was disgusted by what he saw. His phone buzzed. A message from Sienna popped up. "Still sulking? Don't be a drag, Damien. It was just a bit of fun. Don't let your dramatic wife ruin it." He stared at the text for a hot minute. Just last week, Sienna's wild side was a turn-on. Her stunts were exciting. Her total lack of rules felt like freedom. Now he saw her clearly, a hollow shell who collected powerful guys like trophies, only to enjoy watching them shatter. She wasn't into him, but the chaos, the win, the drama of a titan's downfall. Damien cut the cord and blocked her number. It was a tiny move, almost nothing in the grand scheme of his train wreck, but it was his first real decision in a long time. That night, Damien revived a ritual he hadn't touched since college. He drank himself into a complete stupor, all alone. This wasn't the classy enjoyment of a rare vintage, but the grim self-destruction of cheap whiskey downed with a mission. He slid to his bedroom floor, leaned against the bed, and killed a bottle of Jack Daniels while scrolling his phone's photo gallery. He was looking for pictures of Clara. There weren't many. He'd stopped chronicling her life months ago. But some relics from the beginning were still there. Clara laughing at something he couldn't see. Clara rocking a sundress at a friend's summer wedding. Clara conked out on his shoulder at the movies, her face full of absolute trust. At what point did his view of her totally flip? When did she go from being his partner to just another number on a financial statement? He found their wedding pictures, a simple city hall thing because Damien had called a big wedding a trashy waste of money. Clara, in a department store dress, was glowing with a joy so pure it was almost painful to see. She had put all her faith in him, in them, in their future, and he'd given her a house full of loneliness, a pregnancy in isolation, and a photograph that burned the last of her belief in him to ashes. The core of his world, his phone, dropped from a hand that suddenly went numb as his surroundings began to melt. Squeezing his eyes shut did nothing, just made the spinning worse. He forced himself to look up, focusing on the architecture of his prison, the fancy designer lights, the perfect custom molding. In this penthouse, every single surface screamed bespoke luxury, a total mismatch for the fake life he was living. He blacked out. He woke up to a vicious morning light, his head feeling like it was about to split open. His lifeline to the world was gone. The phone's screen was black. A foul taste of acid and failure coated his tongue. His body was protesting a night spent on hardwood floors worth $300 per square foot. He stepped into a shower hot enough to peel skin, trying to violently cleanse himself, as if the heat could burn off the stain of his screw-ups and the terror of a permanent split. He came out to find Marcus in his kitchen, a ghost making coffee. His wrecked voice asked how he got in. "You gave me a key for emergencies," Marcus said, pushing a mug across the counter. "This counts." "I am fine," was the knee-jerk lie. "No, you are not," was the calm shutdown, "but you're not dead, which we'll chalk up as a win." Marcus explained himself. "I checked on you last night. You were out cold on the bedroom floor. I almost called the paramedics." The question was flat, emotionless. "What stopped you?" "You are breathing," Marcus answered. "And I figured you were in the middle of a necessary civil war." Marcus gave him a long, hard look, trying to see if the self-inflicted therapy had resulted in any kind of breakthrough. Damien took a sip of the coffee, a brutally black brew that was the perfect wake-up call from his own BS. It delivered a thunderous headache, he said, and the sharp realization that I am a complete fool. A place to begin, then, Marcus noted, putting his own mug down. So, what is the next move? I will sign the custody agreement. Just like that, a total surrender. It is an acceptance of facts, Damien corrected him, sitting on a stool. Clara has every right to shield herself and our kid from my toxicity. My actions prove I am a liability. She is setting boundaries, which I will respect. An eyebrow shot up on Marcus's forehead. Who is this guy, and what did you do with Damien Vale? The thing known as Damien Vale, he replied, is the problem. Maybe it is time for Daniel to make a comeback. The name felt foreign, a relic from a past self he had surgically removed, a version he saw as too weak, too soft, too human. This he finally got was the biggest mistake of his entire life. Very well, Daniel, Marcus said, feeling the name out. What is the game plan? I do not have one, he confessed, but I know what it is not. Daniel looked his friend in the eye. I will not fight her. I will not use my money to back her into a corner. Claire asked for space, and I will give it to her while I figure out how to be a man who deserves to be in that kid's life. And the company? You will be the regent for now until I can find myself, separate from the armor of being untouchable. A heavy silence hung in the air between them. You are 100% serious about this? Absolutely. The world will see this as weakness. Let it. Damien finished his coffee in one last hard swallow. I have spent my whole life building a fortress of strength, only to become its only prisoner. It is possible that embracing being weak is the only way to fix this. After Marcus left, Damien started a message to Jennifer Reeves. The words were simple and to the point. I have reviewed the custody agreement. I agree to all terms without condition. Please send the final documents for me to sign and tell Clara I am profoundly sorry, not as a way to ask for forgiveness, but as a statement of fact. I am sorry for everything. He shut off the email before his old self could stage a mutiny. He drifted through the luxurious cage of his penthouse, his eyes finally, after months of being blind, seeing it as the tomb it had become. The art she hated seemed to judge him from the walls, a jury of silent accusers. The furniture built to be looked at was cold and repelled human touch. A kitchen made for a 5-star restaurant stood sterile, without the memory of a single meal shared. And the nursery, a flawless, untouched mausoleum for a life that would never be lived there. This was not a home. It was a monument to a dead future. Damien's hand found his phone, his voice flat. Beth at Riverside Realty. I have a penthouse to sell. Within 48 hours, the monument was gone, sold in a bidding war between 3 people desperate to buy their own piece of the sky, to look down from 47 stories and think they had won the world. Damien got rid of the property with the cold efficiency of a corporate raider taking the first bid with zero negotiation. The agent, Beth, was professionally baffled, almost worried by his reckless financial choice. Her cautious question, "Are you absolutely sure you do not want to consider other offers?" was met with a sharp and final no. Inside, however, a quiet war was raging. The penthouse had become a psychological torture chamber, its silence making the ghost of Clara even louder. The spotless nursery stood like a gleaming, cruel monument to his failure. Even the skyline he once thought he owned now only served to outline the massive, crushing scale of his loneliness. So get this. His boy Marcus sees the whole thing as a total psychotic break, and you can tell he's freaking out. He's like, "Bro, you sold the penthouse. You gave me the keys to the kingdom, and now you've gone completely off-grid. Damien picked some random coffee joint for their meet, a major step down from his glass towers. On this neutral turf, he drops that he's on some quest to find himself. When Marcus straight up accuses him of systematically wrecking his own life, Damien's reply is a quiet, apparently. He even admits the penthouse was just a projection, a massive flex he now has to totally dismantle. I'm done with projections, Damien declares, basically killing off his old self. His master plan? A quiet move to Riverside, a low-key pilgrimage to get back in the orbit of the woman and unborn kid he ditched. This news makes Marcus nearly choke on his espresso, the shock literally catching in his throat. The logic was as simple as it was brutal. While building his empire, he torched everything that actually mattered. The only way forward is to flip his entire life script and undo all the toxic behaviors that got him there. Marcus lays out the obvious fallout, pointing out that the sharks are circling. They smell weakness, he warns. The word on the street is you've abandoned the throne. Damien's response is a complete dismissal of that world. Let them talk. His game plan has shifted from owning the world to fixing himself. As a final symbolic move, he asks to be called by his real name, Daniel. Marcus just nods, but his face says what Daniel is ignoring. You can't just wish an empire and all its enemies away. He clarifies this isn't a surrender, but a strategic retreat until he can become someone worth returning to. The move itself is like a total system reboot. Designer furniture, priceless art, a closet full of clout, all of it deleted from his life like a virus. The only things he keeps are basic essentials and a small stash of baby clothes, a fragile, holy link to his penance. It's a calculated move to erase his ego, a prayer to become small, become quiet, become real. The new place was chosen for being painfully normal, a basic house on a street where families just live. The sounds of suburbia, kids laughing, dogs barking, were so foreign to his old, sterile life that it felt weirdly healing. The mover checks out the small house and his huge truck and smirks that it's a hell of a step down. The judgment from his old world couldn't be clearer. But for Daniel, this felt like the first real upgrade of his life. He unpacks his few belongings with the intense focus of a monk, bringing a quiet order to the tiny space. Then he performs a ritual of humility, eating a cheap pizza on the bare floor. He'd later say this basic meal was more satisfying than anything his private chef ever cooked up. It wasn't about the food, it was about laying a new foundation, an anchor to a normal life he'd only ever looked down on from above. His lawyer, Jennifer Reeves, confirms he's totally surrendered on custody and wired a massive fortune to Clara. Plot twist, the money is bounced back instantly. It's a cold, silent message from Clara, a hard no to letting money fix their broken world. Daniel feels the rejection like a body blow. The words wounded, but in that pain he gets it. She couldn't be bought or managed. She was refusing to be just another asset on his balance sheet. He tries to reframe the money as being for the kid, a weak attempt to dodge his own rejection. His gentle questions about Clara's well-being slam into the brick wall of attorney-client privilege. His lawyer then offers a cold, unsolicited take. For a guy with his profile, this total capitulation is a major red flag. His refusal to fight, to use his power, was a radical break from the playbook of a high-conflict personality. The lawyer's final thought, "That is significant," lands less like legal advice and more like a tiny sliver of approval. He tries to explain his new mindset, a shift from a life built on winning to a desperate need to be deserving. After the call, he's slammed with an emotion he can only call a fragile, terrifying hope. It's the feeling of a guy used to the dark seeing a distant light and fearing it's just a final hallucination before everything goes black. The inevitable showdown comes in the form of Clara's brother, Evan Hart, who looks like he's ready for revenge. His hatred is so thick you could cut it with a knife, coiling around him as he questions if Daniel's new act is even real. Daniel's excuse is a flimsy line about being there for emergencies. Evan rips that to shreds with one brutal fact. Clara cried for 3 solid days after he left, forcing Daniel to face the absolute devastation he caused. Evan calls his return a calculated performance, a manipulative play to get back into his sister's life. He diagnoses it as a narcissist's desperate hunt for a redemption narrative. Then he drops the ultimatum. If this is real, vanish. Show you care by finally giving her what you never have: distance. This sets up a perfectly cruel trap for Daniel. The only way to prove his love is to completely erase himself from her life. His killer instincts scream at him to fight back, to debate, to dominate the conversation like he always has. Instead, Daniel silences that voice, choosing her sanity over his own desperate need for her. His surrender is a single broken word: okay. It was the hardest, most important victory of his entire life. He then admits he loves her, but with a sharp new self-awareness, calling it both selfish and destructive. Daniel's quiet surrender seems to disarm Evan, taking some of the venom out of his anger. He then reveals the messed up truth of Clara's state. She's trapped in a classic psychological nightmare, stuck between her fear of more pain and the tragic memory of the man Daniel used to be. It's a textbook trauma bond, leaving her unable to reconcile the loving past with the cruel present, which has completely stalled her ability to heal. Daniel's denial is shut down with a devastating list of his neglect. Evan recites every business meeting that came first, every ignored call, every moment he looked at Clara but didn't actually see her. The final verdict was that he made her feel psychologically invisible, a poison far worse than just being abandoned. This truth hits Daniel like a punch to the gut. He had treated the woman he loved like an object. A promise to change falls from his lips, the words feeling empty even to him. As he's leaving, Evan throws one last challenge, digging up a key artifact from their past, a letter Clara kept. Damien's memory is a complete blank. Evan tells him it's from when their love first started, a pact they made about their future and his own growth. He explains that Clara mourns the guy who wrote that vow, not the corporate titan he became. After this confrontation, Damien feels a desperate need to dig through his stuff and find it. Dated 4 years earlier, the letter was a relic from the fragile beginning of their relationship. Even his handwriting looked like it belonged to a man who was less guarded. The letter was a raw confession of his own flaws, followed by a solemn promise. Clara, I know I'm not simple. I promise to choose you every single day. He had signed it with his real name, Daniel. In that instant, the massive scale of how he broke that personal vow became devastatingly clear. He folds the note, sticking it in his wallet as a physical reminder of the man he was supposed to be. The following weeks were a harsh lesson in being a nobody. Damien's new apartment was sterile, his career a hollow joke. The deep quiet of his new life was a weird mix of peace and a constant buzzing anxiety that fueled his overthinking. He began to rebuild his world with boring routines, cleaning his house, reading, and learning how to be anonymous in Riverside. This path ultimately led him to seek professional therapy. His therapy sessions were in a generic office in a huge commercial building. His therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, a woman in her 50s, looked at him with a cool, professional distance. After the initial questions, she cut straight to the chase. What was he running from? Damien tried to flip it, claiming he was building something, not escaping. Dr. Chen gently tore that story apart, suggesting his relentless climb to success was its own form of escape. And with that, the mission was set. To figure out what he was really chasing. So the therapy sessions dig up the dirt, and surprise, surprise, our guy's got major trauma from being broke as a kid. His parents' constant money problems basically hardwired a fear of needing anyone into his brain. So what does he do? He goes full psycho overdrive, building an entire empire just so he'd never have to ask for help. Then, in session 5, Doc Chen asks where Clara fits in. Damien admits she got past his firewalls by actually seeing him. And get this, he calls the experience terrifying. He spills that this terror is because deep down he thinks he's not worth loving. This fear fueled his whole strategy: ditch people before they can ditch him. I made her invisible, he straight up tells the doctor. If she couldn't see me, I couldn't let her down. When asked about the nuke, he dropped that photo. He blames booze and control issues. But the doc calls it what it was: a self-destruct sequence designed to make her leave before she could choose to. That truth bomb hits Damien like a freight train. He asks her what the hell he's supposed to do now. Dr. Chen's advice? Radical acceptance. Own what he did and change for himself, not to get back in Clara's good graces. At the same time, his right-hand man, Marcus, is hitting him up about the business, but Damien's old fire is just gone. When Marcus calls him out for being checked out, Damien's just like, my brain gets it, but my heart's not in it anymore. Damien cops to the fact that his whole power trip was a colossal screw-up, and he's actively trying to delete his corporate identity. When the doc asks who he is now, he basically says he's figuring it out. Then, plot twist. 2 months after the split, he bumps into her in a freaking grocery store. He sees Clara, now 8 months pregnant, glowing with the peace he could never have given her. She's completely lost in the zone, just picking out vegetables. He looks at her and sees something so real it makes his entire manufactured life look like a total sham. He gets this massive urge to go to her, but his buddy Evan's words echo in his head, freezing him on the spot. Watching from afar, he could tell she was genuinely okay. In that instant, his need to own her just melts away and turns into pure gratitude. He gets that she didn't reject him. She escaped the poison he was spewing. He finally understood she picked a stable life over his brand of crazy. With some serious self-restraint, he waits for her to leave before finishing his shopping, his hand shaking just a little. That night, he starts writing a letter, choosing every word carefully. It didn't start with begging, but with a straight-up fact. Clara, I saw you today. You looked happy. I'm glad. I'm writing. So you know I'm no longer the man who sent that picture. The letter lays out all the facts of his new life. He sold the penthouse, moved, started therapy, and handed over the keys to his company. He wrote about wanting to ditch his fake persona for something real. He made it crystal clear he wasn't trying to win her back, but to become someone their kid could look up to and to finally be worthy of the love she tried to give him. He signed off with his birth name Daniel, wishing her and the baby well. He dropped the letter in the mail the next morning, a total act of surrender. 3 days later, an envelope with her handwriting is in his mailbox. That same tremor comes back as he rips it open. Her reply was a tightrope walk between hoping he gets better and the massive doubt his past actions earned. She wasn't ready to trust him, but admitted Evan's word that he was changing carried a lot of weight. The baby was due in 4 weeks. She wrote about getting ready, about the mix of joy and terror she was feeling. She confirmed she always mourned the man he used to be, the one who wrote love notes. She said she hoped, for their kid's sake, that version of him wasn't gone for good. Daniel read it 5 times, dissecting every word. The message was clear. Forgiveness was a long shot, but the door to some kind of future wasn't completely bolted shut. It was more than he deserved, and it was enough. He shot back a carefully crafted message. I'll keep doing the work. I'll stay close. When the baby comes, I'll take whatever role you give me, even if it's just financial. You're not alone in this. I'm 5 minutes away for anything. Daniel. And though they started texting, short, functional updates between 2 people navigating the minefield of their past and an unknown future. Clara wrote about craving pickles and ice cream. He wrote about burning his dinner and learning to cook from internet videos. She told him the baby kicked hardest at night. He confessed he bought a book on being a dad, even though he wasn't sure he'd ever get to use it. That picture was always there between them, the ghost they never mentioned. They never talked divorce or getting back together, only the baby. 4 weeks became 3, then 2. Daniel prepped his tiny apartment, stocking up on diapers and formula, building a crib that might stay empty. Then on a Tuesday at 11:30 p.m., his phone lit up. The caller ID was Evan. Daniel's heart just stopped cold. Hello? It's time. Evan's voice was stretched tight with panic. Her water broke. We're heading to Riverside General. She wanted you called. I'm on my way. In one move, Daniel was out the door. A 15-minute drive to the hospital turned into a white-knuckle 8 minutes. Every red light was a personal insult, every car an enemy. She wanted you called. That phrase was his golden ticket, echoing in his head. She could have just deleted his number and relied on Evan, but after all the pain, the betrayal, and the radio silence, she had actually summoned him. The hospital parking garage was a dark, empty pit at this hour. Daniel dumped his car in the first spot he saw, sprinting through the automatic doors into the bright, sterile lobby. A bored-looking receptionist looked up. Labor and delivery, Daniel gasped out of breath. Clara Vale, my wife. The clicking of her keyboard was agonizingly slow. 3rd floor, elevators on your left. Ask the nurse's station. Daniel was already moving. The elevator ride felt like an eternity, even stopping on the 2nd floor for some guy with an empty gurney. The 3rd floor finally came. The doors opened to a hallway that smelled like bleach and high stakes. Up ahead was the nurse's station, where a young woman with a kind face looked up. I'm looking for Clara Vale. I'm her. I'm Daniel, her husband. The nurse checked a chart. She's in room 314, but sir, just so you know, she's only at 3 centimeters. This could be a very long process. First labors often are. Time doesn't matter. I need to see her. The nurse's professional mask slipped into sympathy. Room 314 is down the hall to your right. Her brother is with her. Go easy, you hear? The pain's pretty bad. Daniel just nodded, his legs feeling like they belonged to someone else as he walked down the hall. The door was cracked open. He could hear Clara's voice inside, strained with pain. I can't do this. Evan, I seriously can't. It hurts too much. You can. You're the strongest person I know. You walked out on a guy who didn't deserve you when you were 7 months pregnant. You built a whole new life from scratch. You can absolutely do this. Daniel was frozen in the doorway, stuck. An old toxic instinct screamed at him to bust in there, take charge, and fix her pain. But a newer, hard-earned voice told him to ask for permission first. He knocked gently on the door. The voices inside stopped. Then he heard Evan, "Come in." Daniel pushed the door open. The room was sterile and basic. A hospital bed hooked up to beeping machines. Evan in a visitor's chair, a window looking out at the parking lot. And on the bed, Clara. You could already see the exhaustion carved into her face. Her hair was pulled back, her skin pale except for 2 red blotches on her cheeks. She was in a standard hospital gown, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. When her eyes locked with his, some unreadable emotion flashed across her face. Was it relief, fear, or something way too complicated to name? You're here? Her voice was barely a whisper. You asked me to come. Daniel just hovered by the door, not sure if he was even allowed to step further into her space. I'll always come if you call. Evan stood up. I'm gonna go get some coffee. Give you 2 a minute. He stopped next to Daniel, his voice a low warning. Don't make me regret calling you. He left and they were finally alone together for the first time in 3 months. How are you? Daniel asked the question, and its total uselessness just hung in the air. A tiny smile touched Clara's lips. Like a small human is trying to claw its way out of my body. The contractions are about every 6 minutes. The doctor said it's gonna be a long night. May I? Daniel pointed to the chair Evan had just left. May I sit? Yes, please. He crossed the room slowly, like one sudden move could shatter whatever fragile truce they had going. Right up close, my guy could see the absolute damage report from her struggle, the stress lines around her mouth, her hands doing a little shaky shake. She finally gives him the time of day, admitting, I got your letters, every last one. Then she hits him with, I didn't need a reply, just knowing you were thinking about me, about the baby. He jumps in. I know, but it proved I was at least trying. Suddenly, a contraction slams into her, making her body go ramrod straight. Daniel just watches, completely useless, as she starts this breathing thing, counting low. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The pain backs off, leaving her drained. What do I do? Daniel pleads. I need a job. There's nothing. You just have to wait. We both do. What? And then she finally locks eyes with him for real. It was a look with 0 filters, the first one he'd gotten since he showed up. You look different, she says. I am. How? He stalls, trying to find words for 3 months of tearing himself down. Therapy, self-imposed exile, and wrecking the massive monument he'd built to his own ego. I sold the penthouse, he starts. I'm in Riverside now. I gave Marcus total control of the company. I started seeing a therapist twice a week, and I've been learning that my ambition was just me running from my own issues. A legit flash of shock crosses Clara's face. You're in therapy? For 2 months. Turns out I've got a mountain of work to do. Like what? Like building a whole empire as a shield because I was terrified of ever being weak again. Like ghosting you because you saw the real dude behind the armor, and that was scarier than any business rival. like sending that picture because some broken part of me wanted to burn it all down before you realized you deserved way better. The confessions just hung there in the silence between them, her face giving nothing away. My therapist, Dr. Chen, says I'm a work in progress, Daniel added. That this isn't a straight line, that I'm gonna mess up. But I am trying, Clara. I am genuinely trying to be a man who deserves to be this baby's dad, and maybe one day deserves to be your husband again. Daniel. Clara's voice was soft, switching from the formal Damien back to the name he wanted. I don't know if we can go back to how we were. I know. I'm not asking to go back. I'm asking if we can build something new. Before she could even answer, another contraction rocked her. This one was a beast. She gasped, her other hand grabbing the bed rail. On pure reflex, Daniel reached out and took her hand. She squeezed it with insane force, her nails digging into his palm as the pain peaked. Breathe, he said, his voice low and steady. I'm right here. You're safe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He counted with her, his own heart pounding until it was over. When she finally relaxed, she didn't let go of his hand. Thank you, she breathed out. Always. Evan popped back in with coffee, freezing in the doorway as he took in the scene, their hands locked together, a fragile, hopeful link forming in the gap that separated them. Another one? Evan asked. A big one, Clara confirmed. They're getting closer. Evan handed her a small cup of ice chips. The nurse said these are okay. No other food or drink until the baby's here. The next few hours just melted into a weird, timeless blur. Contractions came in nonstop waves, each one stronger than the last. A doctor came and went, checking her progress like a technician. 4 centimeters, 5, 6. With every number, Clara's pain and exhaustion just got deeper. Daniel never budged from her side. Evan offered to tag him out so he could rest, but Daniel shut it down. Every time a contraction started and Clara's hand searched for his, he was right there. Every time she needed ice, a cold cloth, or a voice to count with, he answered. Around 3 a.m, at 7 centimeters and crying from pure exhaustion and pain, she looked at him, her eyes totally exposed. I'm afraid, she confessed in a broken whisper. Of what? Of everything. The pain getting worse, something going wrong, that I'll be a terrible mom, that I'm going to have to do this by myself. You are not alone, Daniel stated, his voice packed with the certainty he felt in his bones. I am here. Evan is here. You are loved, and you're going to be an amazing mother. How can you be so sure? Because you were strong enough to walk away from me just to protect this child. You chose safety over the entire life you knew. That proves you can make the tough calls a parent has to make. Clara's laugh was a brittle, fragile sound, full of tears she hadn't shed. That's a pretty dark way to prove a point. It's a fact. His fingers tightened on hers. When our child is born, our history takes a back seat. I'll be there for the night feedings, the appointments, whenever you need me. I'll be the father I promised I'd be 4 years ago. The letter, Clara whispered, the words sounding empty. I reread it. You promised to choose me every single day. A promise I blew to pieces, I know. Let me make a new one to choose both of you every day for the rest of my life. Before she could say anything, the physician walked into the room. Dr. Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 50s, had this pro-level calm about her, the kind you get after navigating thousands of these emotional hurricanes. Let's check on your progress, she said, her voice solid as she snapped on some gloves. After a quick check, she gave a clinical smile. You're at 10 centimeters, Clara. It is time to start pushing. That announcement sent a literal shockwave of fear through the room. Clara's grip on Daniel's hand turned into a bone crusher. I'm not ready. I can't do this. That's not true, the doctor said with some tough love. Your body is ready. The baby is ready. We just need your head to get on the same page. Her eyes flicked over to Daniel. Dad, you staying? Daniel's focus, though, was already 100% on Clara. Do you need me? Inside Clara's wide eyes, you could see a mashup of terror, pain, and a tiny spark of new hope. Yes, I need you here. Please. Hearing her say, I need you, was like an earthquake, shattering their old world and building a new one from the rubble. Then I'm not leaving, Damien swore, a promise forged in the heat of childbirth. Evan took his cue, setting up on Clara's other side. The medical team moved around the room with slick efficiency, a sterile dance around the bed and its gear. Dr. Morrison got into position, saying, All right, Clara, the next time you feel it, push with everything you've got. A deep, powerful force. Think of the biggest physical effort you can imagine. Anywhere else, that might have been funny. Here, it was just raw. As the agony peaked, Clara did it, her face turning crimson with strain, while Damien's voice ticked off the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. On the other side, Evan was a constant stream of encouragement. That was excellent, Dr. Morrison confirmed. Seriously excellent. Now breathe. We're going to do that again with the next one. A primal biological beat took over. The surge, the push, the break. The cycle went on and on, carving exhaustion into Clara's face, each attempt looking weaker than the last. Sweat soaked her hair and glued her gown to her skin. But she kept going, running on a drive to meet their child that Damien saw as nothing less than epic. I can see the head, the doctor announced. Clara, you're right there at the finish line. Just a few more good pushes. I can't, Clara cried, her voice cracking under the strain. There's nothing left. It's impossible. Yes, you can. Damien's voice was pure steel. You have a strength that blows away anyone I've ever met. You survived me. You survived leaving me. You will survive this. Our child is moments away. I just need you to dig down and find that strength one more time. Clara's eyes met his, tears making tracks down her face as she gave a tiny nod. When the next contraction hit its peak, she bore down with the last scraps of her energy. That's it, Dr. Morrison yelled. The head is out. One more push for the shoulders. A final, raw scream ripped out of Clara, a sound where total agony met total victory. And that's when a new cry joined the room, the cry of a newborn. It's a girl, the doctor announced, holding up a tiny, red, screaming baby. You have a daughter. In that single moment, time just snapped. Every part of Damien's identity, his empire, his power, his money, his name, it all just turned to dust in front of this tiny, perfect, crying human. His daughter. Their daughter. The nurses quickly cleaned her up before laying her on Clara's chest. The baby's screams softened to whimpers and then went quiet, calmed by the familiar sound of her mom's heartbeat. Clara's hands came up to hold her, tears of pain, joy, and insane relief just pouring down her face. Hello, little one, Clara whispered. Hello, we've been waiting for you. Damien was frozen, his breathing shallow. His eyes were locked on them, his woman and his child, as he felt the very foundation of his soul get rewritten. This wasn't the same shatter he felt when Clara left. This was a whole new level of rewiring, a spiritual reboot. "You want to cut the cord, Dad?" the nurse asked, holding out the scissors. Damien's eyes locked on Clara, waiting for the signal. She gave a teary-eyed nod. With hands that were definitely not steady, Damien snipped the 9-month supply line connecting his daughter to her mother. A nurse snagged the baby, rattling off stats that were just noise to Damien. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 20 inches, flawless scores. Then she was back on Clara's chest, wrapped up and red, her face all scrunched up and perfect. "She got your nose," Clara whispered. "And your jaw." "She's got your eyes," Damien shot back. "Just look at 'em." Evan, who was having a meltdown in the corner, finally came over. "She's perfect, Clara. You did it." "We did it," Clara shot back, her eyes drilling into Damien. "All of us." After patching things up, Dr. Morrison made a tactical retreat. "I'll give you all some space. Congratulations." Once they were alone, the 4 of them, a heavy, almost holy quiet fell over the room. The kid made little noises, getting used to the outside world. Clara, though wrecked, was practically glowing, a hand protectively over their daughter. "So, you guys thought about any names?" Evan finally asked. "I had a list," Clara admitted, "but looking at her, none of them fit." She turned her gaze on Damien. "What's your play?" And bam, that was a massive trust fall. A partnership offer, a door creaking open. "How about Emma?" Damien suggested. "It means whole, universal, complete." Clara considered the name, her eyes glued to their daughter. "Emma. Emma Vale." A smile finally broke through. "I like it. Her name is Emma." The baby, Emma, then let out a huge yawn, a tiny, perfect picture of peace. And a feeling Damien hadn't felt in forever slammed into him. It wasn't power, not control, not the rush of a win, but love. Pure, unfiltered love. "Can I?" His voice totally failed him. "Can I hold her?" Clara's eyes scanned his face, reading him like a secret file. Whatever she found was enough. She carefully passed the small, warm bundle into his arms. Emma's weight was nothing and everything at once. Damien held her to his chest, terrified of screwing up, mesmerized by her perfect little fingers and the way she just trusted him. "Hey, Emma," he whispered, "I'm your father, and I give you my word. I'll do better by you than I did by your mother. I'll show up. I'll be here. I'll love you so fiercely, you'll never have to doubt it for a second." Tears were just pouring down his face now. He didn't care. Let them fall. Let the whole suit of armor just rust away. Let him be weak in front of this tiny person who would never give a damn about his empire, his money, or his power. All she'd ever want was him, and he would be there every single day for the rest of his damn life. "Daniel," Clara said softly. He looked up. Her face was impossible to read. "Thank you," she said, "for coming, for being here. I know it doesn't fix everything, but it's something." "I'm gonna keep being here," Damien swore, "for as long as you'll let me." Evan cleared his throat. "Okay, I'm gonna give you two some privacy. Yell if you need anything." He kissed Clara's forehead, stared at Emma in awe, and then bailed. Alone now with Clara and their kid, Damien carefully sat in the chair next to the bed, still holding Emma tight. She was already asleep, her little chest moving up and down. "She's perfect," he said again. "She is." Clara just watched them. "I was so angry at you for months. I wanted to hate you, to cut you out completely and raise her by myself." "You would have been right to. Maybe. But your letters started showing up. Evan told me you moved to Riverside, and that I saw you in the grocery store, looking totally lost by the vegetables. A small, real smile touched Clara's lips. You just looked so normal, so human, not the king who shattered my heart. Just Daniel, the man I actually fell in love with. Damien felt his throat tighten. I'm trying to find my way back to being that guy. I can see that, but Daniel, you need to get something straight. Her tone flipped to deadly serious. I can't do this again. I can't be second place. I can't come after the Empire. If you're going to be in Emma's life, in our lives, things have to be different. They will be. I've already set things in motion. Starting something is one thing. Seeing it through is another. Clara shifted, hissing in pain. I need to know that when stuff hits the fan, when business is calling, when power looks tempting, you will always choose us. Not just today, in this room with our newborn, but in a month, and a year, and 10 years from now. I will. You promised that before, in the letter. I know, and I screwed up. I've got no right to ask you to believe me. Damien looked down at Emma's peaceful, sleeping face. But I'm asking anyway. Let me prove it to you. We don't have to be married. We don't have to live together. We just need to be two people who love this little girl and want what's best for her. Let me show you, with actions and not words, that I've changed. Clara was silent for what felt like an eternity. What does that look like exactly? I'm staying in my house in Riverside, and just like that, Damien laid out the terms of his surrender. His road to redemption wouldn't be paved with grand promises, but with the boring, everyday grind of being a dad. He'd rebuild their trust just by showing up, relentlessly. In return, Clara demanded he ditch his old weapons, his cash, and his influence. He agreed that from now on, his only currency would be dependability. The sight of him, a father standing guard in the middle of the night, finally broke through her walls. A tiny flicker of belief ignited. The baby, Emma, was then passed back into her mother's arms. The second Clara touched the kid, a crazy calm filled the room. He tossed out the name Grace, a not-so-subtle prayer for the second chance he didn't deserve. Clara saw right through the performance in his voice. A long silence hung between them as the reality of this new, fragile setup sank in. A family was born into a future you couldn't see through right before the nurses stormed in and broke the spell. For a day or two, the hospital was a fancy jail cell run by visiting hours. The rules gave Damien a 24/7 pass, but he played it smart, offering the choice to Clara, a strategic move in a war he was already losing. After a silence packed with bad history, she said yes. He watched the first feeding and the first doctor's visit, grilling the doc about sleep schedules and the nasty details of baby digestion, like he was cross-examining a witness. He stood a sleepless watch, a bodyguard spooked by every noise from the bassinet. In the blue light just before dawn, he gave a quiet speech to the newborn, a promise to reinvent himself for Clara. He sketched out a new map of the world with the baby at its center, where love would tear down his empire. When her tiny fist wrapped around his finger, he didn't feel a reflex, he felt a pardon being signed. This was his workshop, a chance to melt down the husband he used to be and recast himself as a father. The first 2 weeks were a foggy nightmare of exhaustion and clumsy on-the-job training. While Clara recovered elsewhere, he started his daily grind, trading big shots for a 7 a.m. arrival with supplies picked with obsessive care. His hands, once tools of command, learned the delicate art of taking care of someone. He ran cover, shielding Clara from the baby's needs, so she could get better. A third party, Evan, watched with total suspicion, just waiting for monster to snap. But the powerful boss persona was gone, replaced by a tired, scruffy parent humming bits of lullabies. When Evan backed him into a corner during a 6 o'clock feeding, Damien said the change was all because of the kid and her alone. Later on, he started adding Clara's name to his list of reasons. Evan warned him that forgiveness was a country she might never let him back into. Damien put on a show of patience he didn't have, claiming he just wanted to orbit around her. The brutal routine of childcare and business became his new code, and playing the perfect dad was his only path to absolution. After 3 weeks, she asked to see his place. She played it off as a question about logistics, a warm-up to the custody talk. A cold dread washed over him, but he agreed on the spot. He watched her show up the next day, moving with their kid in a smooth, expert rhythm. This version of her, the mother, wiped the memory of the beautiful, sad woman he once ruled, forcing him to completely reset his definition of what it meant to own something. He threw the door open before she could even knock, a desperate energy buzzing just under his rehearsed calm. The apartment was a prison cell compared to the palace they'd lived in. But smack in the middle was a perfectly decked-out nursery, a shrine built as hard proof of his repentance. This, he explained, was to show he could be trusted with the kid's care all on his own. So he pitches the safe house. It's secure and close by, and that's literally it. She scopes the place and finds his new dad starter pack, cookbooks and parenting manuals. In the bedroom, he strategically placed an old photo of them from before the crash. The second she sees it, he launches into some rehearsed speech about losing his priorities. The baby crying is his cue, and he guides Clara into the nursery, a room basically designed for this exact showdown. As she's feeding their kid, it hits him hard. This feels like home. But then, bam! She attacks, shredding his cozy moment by calling out a massive lie about a completely different photograph from their past. He drops to the floor, pulling a full-on theatrical move to look smaller while he confesses everything. He blames the booze and his insane need for control, even name-dropping a therapist to make his self-diagnosed fear sound legit. He paints this picture of a mob boss hiding a scared kid, totally convinced she'd dump him if she ever saw the real him. But Clara sees right through his game, calling it a preemptive strike to keep his power. And get this, he agrees instantly, a slick move that makes her think he's being honest. With the baby quiet, he admits he did permanent damage, but then tries to pivot the future, dodging the weight of his past crimes. Clara ends it by giving the whole staged room a slow, cold look. The bare-bones nursery turns into her courtroom. Clara puts his whole transformation on trial, demanding solid proof beyond his Dad of the Year performance. He agrees to let her watch his every move. She spies on his remote therapy sessions and clocks him managing his finances meticulously. A total 180 from the guy who used to throw money around like a weapon. She watches him epically fail at cooking, almost smiling when he burns part of their dinner. She notices his private chef is long gone, a ghost of his former power. The vibe is shattered when his top lieutenant, Marcus, shows up, absolutely floored by how far the boss has fallen. When asked if he's losing his mind, Damien just looks at Clara and says he's finally finding it. He lays it out for Marcus. This new life might look like a total meltdown, but he's not losing his mind, he claims. He's discovering it. The entire criminal empire, all the violence and power was just one big distraction. This quiet, small life with Emma is the only real thing left. His one and only goal now is building a future with his daughter. Then he dares to ask if they can start fixing what he broke. Her reaction is a total hurricane of emotions. She's still raging over the pain he caused, but also totally thrown by his steady, low-key support. The question hangs in the air. Is this for real? Or is this just his most brilliant manipulation yet? He admits no grand gesture can prove he's sincere. Only him being there, day after boring day, can do it. That's his one offer. Clara looks at their sleepy baby, who needs a father who chooses her, no questions asked. He swears he'll become that guy. "And what about me?" she asks. He answers, "A partner who's present and who chooses you." He admits he can't promise perfection, only that he'll try. And with that, her defenses completely crumble. All the grief for the life they torched comes pouring out, exposing the raw wound of his betrayal. He knows an apology is useless, but it's a start. He doesn't ask for forgiveness, just for probation, a chance to prove he's changed. The months tick by, marked by all of Emma's baby firsts. Damien's presence is a rock, a constant. He shows up for every single milestone, documenting his daughter's entire life. Little by little, Clara's walls start coming down, letting him get closer inside the fragile new world they're building together. She starts talking about her own goals again, thinking about going back to her university studies. He gives her his full-throated support. When she mentions she's in psychology, he jokes she's great at reading people. "Everyone but you," she shoots back. He admits he was an expert at hiding and that she was always dangerously willing to see the best in him. He is dead set on helping her get back to school, framing it as payback for how he ignored her before. Their quiet talk is blasted apart by a call from Marcus. A rival crew, the Castellanos, just offered to buy out his entire organization. The offer is $60 million. Damien just takes it all in while watching Clara and Emma play outside. When he asks Marcus for advice, his lieutenant says the old Damien would have answered this offer with bullets and fire. He tells him to take the deal. Damien's voice is hollow as he confirms that Monster is gone for good. "Liquidate it," he orders. "Get rid of all of it." He calls the Empire a beautiful, deadly tumor he could only see after it destroyed everything he loved. The papers were signed 3 weeks later. With one signature, Damien hands his whole operation over to the Castellanos. He splits the money. Half goes into a trust for Emma, a quarter goes to charity, and he keeps the rest to just disappear. Then he calls Clara, inviting them to a small dinner he calls a celebration. A funeral for his dead kingdom, and a baptism for his new life. Clara agrees, as long as the place isn't fancy. They meet up at a small-time Italian joint, like a ghost of a family. Damien comes clean about selling off his entire world, saying he feels a relief so huge it's like a physical weight has been lifted. He tells her what he's doing with the cash. Clara has to ask, is he really okay with it all gone? The power, the fear? Completely, he says. That life was just one giant sick play. This, he says, pointing to their table, is the only thing that's real. This is real. Clara's hand moves across the table, her fingers finally closing the space between them. The touch is like a lightning bolt through his system. She tells him she's proud of the man he's becoming. He asks if this means something's changed. "It means I'm willing to see what we can build," she says. A normal parenting moment happens, and he's totally floored by the simple grace of it all. He finally gets that this connection was the one thing his fortress of power could never give him. Connection, presence, love. 6 months go by and Clara moves into his Riverside house. It's not a romantic reunion. It's a cold, hard deal to rebuild from the ground up. fueled by therapy and careful choices. They're just two parents learning to be a team. She brings color and life into his sterile house, turning the building into a home. Emma's room is a perfect sanctuary. Their weekly therapy is like an excavation, clearing the rubble of their past to build something new. Some therapy sessions end with tears, but they never, ever skip one. It's their silent promise to fix things, not break them again. For Emma's first birthday, they throw a small party. Marcus shows up and notes that Damien had to lose his entire kingdom just to find some peace. "Look at you," he says as Damien helps the baby with her cake. "A year ago, you ran the world. Now you're covered in frosting and smiling like you mean it." "Best deal I ever made," Damien says, cleaning his daughter's face while she giggles. He wasn't talking about selling his empire, but blowing it up to build something from the wreckage. That night, after everyone leaves, they watch the sunset. The silence isn't empty, it's full. "I've been thinking," Clara starts. "About what?" "Us, this thing we're building." She looks right at him. "I think I'm ready." "For what?" "To honor our vows, not as co-parents, as a real marriage, unbreakable and whole." Damien chokes on his breath. "Are you serious? You really see that?" "I do. I've seen the proof every day for a year. I watched you do the hard work. You proved a man can actually change." A small smile plays on her lips. "I think the man I loved is back. Or maybe this is a new man. Either way, I'm ready to build my life with him." Damien reaches for her, and she falls into his arms. They hold on as the sun disappears, both knowing this fragile peace was his only real victory. So get this. These two were basically broken pieces, trying to glue each other back together, building a real family instead of faking one. Damien lays it all out. "My love for you is legit now. Not that crazy obsessive stuff from before, but a stable, core program for the man I'm trying to be." And Clara, dropping the ultimate line, whispers, "I love you too, and I forgive you. For all of it, you're cleared." Her words literally unlocked a year's worth of pressure inside him. He put in the work to prove he'd changed. She saw it and gave him the one thing he couldn't grind for, a free pass. 6 months later, they're re-upping their vows in the garden, with little Emma stumbling between them. This wasn't some public show. It was a hardcore promise to be actual partners every single day. "I promise to actually see you," Damien swore, holding her hands. "To pick you, to build this with you, not just next to you, and to not bail when it gets tough." Clara hit back, tears rolling. "I promise to trust you again, to spot you when you fall, to be your equal, and to pick love over fear every single time." Evan, the ultimate cynic, is officiating, his doubt completely shattered by the proof right in front of him. Marcus is there as a witness, totally floored by Damien's complete character reboot. Then Emma, just 18 months old and clueless about the whole vibe, drops her first real word, "Dada." Damien just snatches her up, holding his daughter while kissing his wife, and you can feel his whole system finally reboot correctly. It wasn't about power or cash, but the gut feeling that he'd salvaged the only loot that mattered from his own train wreck. Down the line, Damien would look back on the night of that photograph as the nuke that both destroyed and remade him. It blew up every life it touched, but it also vaporized the monster he was, forcing a brutal respawn. He poured his strategic genius into a foundation for families getting crushed by poverty. Clara snagged her degree, starting a practice to help women recover from betrayal. Emma grew up with a dad who was always there, learning that real strength is about being reliable, not being in control. Sometimes, Damien would remember his phantom empire and the man he had to metaphorically ice to be good enough for love. He'd think about the self-portrait that triggered his epic fall and feel a weird sense of thanks. That one massive ego trip taught him the most critical lesson. You can conquer the entire world and still have an empty inventory. Being untouchable means being totally alone. True power isn't about controlling squads, but having the guts to connect when your own demons tell you to run. It's the will to rebuild yourself from the rubble of your own fails. Damien Vale was the boss of a fear-based dynasty. Daniel Vale was a husband and father who learned the only conquest worth a damn is the one over yourself. And as he dozed off next to the woman he nearly threw away and the life he almost deleted, he knew without a doubt which man he was. That decision cost him a world built on smoke and mirrors, and in its place, it gave him everything that was 100% real.
Lesson: unhealed shame often disguises itself as dominance, and the people closest to it pay the bill. From a forensic psychological perspective, Damien Vale presents a familiar but highly destructive profile, a man whose external competence successfully concealed a severe dependency on control, admiration, and defensive grandiosity. He did not merely enjoy power, he required it as emotional anesthesia. That distinction matters. Men like Damien are often misread because their pathology is reinforced by social reward. They are disciplined, productive, decisive, financially successful, and skilled at emotional compartmentalization. In many environments, those traits are not questioned. They are celebrated. But under stress, the compensatory structure becomes visible. The individual cannot tolerate humiliation, cannot metabolize vulnerability, and often mistakes emotional intimacy for a threat to identity. Clara's pregnancy intensified precisely those fault lines. Pregnancy changes relational dynamics in ways that can be profoundly destabilizing to narcissistically defended personalities. The expected center of gravity shifts. Attention moves toward dependency, tenderness, routine, and future-oriented caregiving. For a healthy partner, this evokes investment and attachment. For a partner organized around control and self-importance, it can evoke panic, resentment, and withdrawal. He may not consciously think, "I am threatened by this child." Instead, he experiences diffuse irritation, boredom, entitlement, or avoidance. In clinical language, his attachment system is activated, but because he lacks the capacity to regulate vulnerability, he defends against closeness by creating distance. That is exactly what Damien did. Clara did not become invisible to him because she lost value. She became invisible because she represented a form of relational truth he could not manage. She knew him outside the myth. She had access to Daniel, not merely Damien. In psychoanalytic terms, she was a witness to the self beneath the performance. This placed enormous pressure on his defensive identity. The more she embodied tenderness, dependence, and expectation, the more urgently he retreated into empire status and absence. Sienna's function in the narrative is psychologically precise. She does not simply tempt him sexually, she recruits his pathology. Her most powerful intervention is not seduction, but challenge. She frames action in terms of courage versus fear, thereby bypassing his conscience and activating his shame defenses. Shame-based personalities are exquisitely vulnerable to accusations of weakness. Once she suggests that refusal would mean fear, his capacity for reflective judgment deteriorates rapidly. This is why the photograph matters so much. It was not merely cruel, it was diagnostic. Sending that image to Clara was an act of controlled aggression. It combined exhibitionism, humiliation, and self-sabotage in one gesture. He injured the bond preemptively under the illusion that he was proving freedom. Clinically, this resembles what is often seen in patients with fragile narcissistic organization. I will destroy the attachment before the attachment can expose or abandon me. The action appears arrogant, but its engine is terror. Clara's response is equally important. She leaves. She does not escalate, negotiate, or collapse into dramatic pleading. This indicates a psychologically healthier boundary structure than Damien perhaps anticipated. She accurately interprets the image's information, not merely insult. The message is not, "He made a mistake." The message is, "He is willing to weaponize my pain to regulate his ego." Once that becomes clear, departure becomes an act of self-preservation. One might reasonably ask whether Clara's earlier endurance resembled a trauma bond. There are hints of that: prolonged hope in the face of neglect, idealization of the man he used to be, and emotional loyalty despite increasingly injurious treatment. However, her eventual behavior argues against full entrapment. She does not rationalize indefinitely. Once the betrayal becomes undeniable, she mobilizes support, secures legal distance, and prioritizes the unborn child. In psychological terms, her attachment may have been strained and confused, but her reality testing remained intact. Damien's collapse after her departure is also clinically consistent. When grandiose defenses fail, the individual often experiences disorientation, emptiness, and sudden awareness of emotional impoverishment. The penthouse becomes intolerable because it no longer performs its defensive function. What once symbolized mastery now mirrors isolation. This is not simply sadness, it is narcissistic injury followed by destabilization of identity. The question then is whether his later transformation should be considered credible. In fiction, redemption often arrives too quickly to be psychologically convincing. Here, the more persuasive elements are restraint and repetition. He does not immediately overpower the situation through money or force. He signs the custody agreement. He enters therapy. He relocates. He reduces exposure to the old system of reinforcement. Most importantly, he submits himself to ordinary caregiving tasks. That matters because grandiose personalities are often sustained by extraordinary contexts. To change, they must tolerate being ordinary. Therapy appears to help him make the central insight. His empire was not only ambition, it was avoidance. He was fleeing vulnerability and renaming the flight as success. This is a clinically meaningful breakthrough. Once he recognizes that the photograph was less an expression of confidence than of self-sabotaging shame, genuine responsibility becomes possible. His daughter's birth becomes the organizing, corrective experience. Infants are psychologically uncompromising. They do not flatter image. They do not negotiate around ego. They require attunement, consistency, and non-performative presence. For a man like Damien, this is not just fatherhood. It is exposure treatment. Every feeding, diaper change, sleepless night, and repeated return to Clara's household trains a different self-state, one that does not win through domination but stabilizes through care. It is also significant that Clara does not reward repentance immediately. From a relational trauma standpoint, this is healthy. She insists on evidence over affect. She does not confuse guilt with change. She waits to see whether behavior reorganizes over time. That waiting protects both her and the child. So what is the life lesson? It is this: some of the most destructive people are not driven primarily by hatred. They are driven by unhealed shame defended through control. They injure others not always because they feel nothing, but because feeling anything deeply enough threatens the identity that keeps them functioning. Unfortunately, this does not reduce accountability. If anything, it heightens it. Unprocessed fear in powerful people is socially catastrophic. Their private pathology becomes public fallout. Damien's eventual growth does not erase the diagnosis implied by his earlier behavior. It demonstrates something more useful. Pathology is not destiny, but change requires humiliation, honesty, and repetitive acts of unglamorous repair. Grand gestures do not heal attachment wounds, regulated presence does. In summary, Damien lost Clara not because he loved too little in some abstract sense, but because he built a personality structure that could not coexist with mutuality. He found his way back only when he stopped using power to defend against shame and began using discipline to serve love. That is the clinical truth beneath the romance. And it is a brutal one. The mind that cannot tolerate vulnerability will eventually turn intimacy into a crime scene.